long as I know you have a humble mind, and as long as you know there's a God upstairs, you can call on him and respect the people. I think you're a real wonderful person. I'm going to give that to you. He's my son. And I'm proud of you, really am.
He is dead, allegedly killed by his father.
Marvin Gaye's children have confirmed the dark truth we all expected. Marvin Gaye, the Prince of Motown, was a towering figure in American music, whose soulful voice and groundbreaking compositions touched millions of lives. His influence on the world of R&B, soul, and popular music at large is indisputable. However, beneath the surface of his immense talent and success lay a complex, troubled man who struggled with inner demons, addiction, and family turmoil. In this documentary, we explore Marvin Gaye's early life, his rise to fame with Motown Records, his socially conscious music, his personal struggles, and the tragic final hours of his life. His children have recently come forward to shed light on the dark truths about their father's life that many had long suspected, confirming the tragic depth of his personal struggles. Early life, the foundation of a troubled soul. Marvin Pence Gaye Jr. was born on April 2, 1939, in Washington, D.C., into a family dynamic fraught with tension and strict discipline. His father, Marvin Gaye Sr., was a Pentecostal minister whose rigid religious beliefs and authoritarian parenting style created an oppressive atmosphere in the Gaye household. Marvin Sr. was a man of deep contradictions. He preached morality and discipline in the church, but struggled with his own demons, including alcoholism and profound insecurities. These inner battles often manifested in erratic and abusive behavior, which he directed primarily at his son, Marvin Jr. From a young age, Marvin Gaye was subjected to his father's harsh discipline. Marvin Sr.'s idea of parenting involved strict control and severe punishment, often crossing the line into emotional and physical abuse. He expected absolute obedience and had little tolerance for anything that deviated from his rigid worldview. The fear and anxiety that Marvin Jr. experienced under his father's roof left deep psychological scars, shaping much of his later life and influencing his music in profound ways. The environment in the Gaye household was one of constant tension. Marvin Sr.'s unpredictable temper created a sense of instability and fear, not just for Marvin, but for his siblings as well. The children grew up walking on eggshells, trying to avoid their father's wrath, which could be triggered by even the smallest perceived infraction. This atmosphere of fear was exacerbated by Marvin Sr.'s struggles with alcohol, which made his behavior even more volatile and his discipline more severe. Amidst this turmoil, young Marvin found solace in music. Music became his refuge, a way to escape the harsh realities of his home life. His mother, Alberta Gaye, recognized her son's extraordinary talent early on and nurtured his passion for music. She was a stabilizing force in Marvin's life, offering him the love and encouragement that was often lacking from his father. Alberta's belief in Marvin's potential was unwavering, and she did her best to protect him from the worst of his father's outbursts, though there was only so much she could do. Marvin Gaye's early experiences with music were deeply tied to the church. He began singing in the choir, where his powerful voice quickly stood out. The church was one of the few places where Marvin felt free and at peace, away from the oppressive environment at home. However, even this sanctuary was not entirely safe from his father's influence. Marvin Sr., who was also deeply involved in the church, had specific ideas about what was appropriate in both religious and musical expression, and he was often critical of Marvin's burgeoning interest in secular music. As Marvin grew older, his passion for music only intensified, and he began to explore the world of doo-wop, a genre that was gaining popularity in the 1950s. He joined several local groups, where he further honed his singing and performing skills. His talent was undeniable, and it was clear to everyone who heard him that Marvin Gaye was destined for something great. However, this growing recognition of his talent only served to increase the tension at home. Marvin Sr., perhaps out of jealousy or fear of losing control, often belittled his son's musical ambitions, dismissing them as frivolous and unworthy of serious attention. The constant belittlement from his father took a toll on Marvin's self-esteem. He was caught in a painful cycle of seeking his father's approval, while simultaneously yearning to break free from his control. This inner conflict would become a defining feature of Marvin's life, contributing to the emotional struggles and insecurities that would haunt him even at the height of his fame. By the time he was a teenager, Marvin Gaye had joined the Moonglows, a prominent doo-wop group, marking his first significant step into professional music. This opportunity was both a blessing and a curse. While it allowed Marvin to escape, at least temporarily, from his father's oppressive influence, it also exposed him to the harsh realities of the music industry, where new challenges awaited. The pressures of living up to his father's rigid expectations, combined with the emotional scars from years of abuse, weighed heavily on Marvin, setting the stage for the emotional struggles that would plague him throughout his life and career. Motown Records, the birth of a star. In 1960, Marvin Gaye made a pivotal move to Detroit, where his musical journey would take a transformative turn. Detroit was home to Motown Records, a burgeoning label that was rapidly becoming a powerhouse in the music industry. Founded by the visionary Berry Gordy, Motown was known for its ability to churn out hit after hit, and Gordy had a keen eye for talent. When Marvin crossed paths with Gordy, it was clear to both men that something special was on the horizon. Gordy quickly recognized Marvin's raw, untapped potential and signed him to the label, marking the start of a collaboration that would yield some of the most memorable and influential music of the 20th century. However, Marvin Gaye's early years at Motown were not without challenges. He arrived at the label with aspirations of becoming a crooner, drawing inspiration from the smooth, sophisticated stylings of Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole. Marvin's dream was to carve out a niche for himself as a jazz or pop singer, performing the kind of lush ballads that had captivated him as a young man. But Berry Gordy had other plans. He saw in Marvin the makings of a star in the rhythm and blues, R&B genre, a space where the label was already making waves with artists like Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. This difference in vision led to a period of creative tension, as Marvin struggled to align his artistic aspirations with the direction Motown wanted to take him. His initial releases under the label were met with lukewarm reception, and Marvin found himself grappling with self-doubt. The pressure to conform to the Motown sound, coupled with his desire to stay true to his musical roots, created an inner conflict that would persist throughout his career. It wasn't until Marvin began to embrace the R&B genre that his career started to gain momentum. Hits like Stubborn Kind of Fellow and Hitchhike began to establish him as a rising star within the Motown roster. These songs showcased Marvin's ability to blend the raw emotion of R&B with the polish that was a hallmark of the Motown sound, a combination that would become his signature. However, it was Marvin's collaborations with the talented and charismatic Tammy Terrell that truly solidified his status in the Motown pantheon. Together, they recorded a series of duets that remain timeless classics. Songs like Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, and You're All I Need to Get By captured the hearts of listeners with their infectious melodies, heartfelt lyrics, and the undeniable chemistry between Marvin and Tammy. These tracks not only highlighted Marvin's vocal versatility, but also his ability to convey deep emotion, further endearing him to audiences and critics alike. While Marvin Gaye's time at Motown was marked by tremendous professional success, it was also a period of personal and creative conflict. The label, under Gordy's direction, was a well-oiled machine, focused on producing radio-friendly hits that could cross over to mainstream audiences. While Marvin appreciated the success and recognition that came with being a Motown star, he increasingly felt constrained by the label's formulaic approach. He yearned to explore more personal and socially conscious themes in his music, to break free from the constraints of the Motown assembly line and create art that was true to his evolving vision as an artist. Political message: the birth of a revolutionary voice. By the late 1960s, the social and political landscape in America was changing rapidly. The civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, and widespread social unrest were dominating headlines and influencing the cultural zeitgeist. Marvin Gaye, always introspective and sensitive to the world around him, began to feel the need to address these issues through his music. The turning point came with the death of his beloved duet partner Tammy Terrell in 1970. Tammy's passing devastated Marvin, plunging him into a deep depression. He questioned the meaning of his work and the direction of his life, eventually channeling his grief and disillusionment into his music. The result was What's Going On, a groundbreaking album that broke away from Motown's pop formula and tackled issues like war, poverty, and racial injustice with unprecedented honesty and depth. What's Going On was a risky move for Marvin and Motown. Berry Gordy initially resisted releasing the album, fearing its political content would alienate fans. But Marvin was determined, and his persistence paid off. The album was a commercial and critical success, hailed as a masterpiece and a landmark in popular music. With its lush, orchestral arrangements and Marvin's impassioned, soulful vocals, What's Going On transcended genre boundaries, influencing artists across the musical spectrum and establishing Marvin Gaye as a revolutionary voice in music. Crossover success, the height of fame and fortune. The success of What's Going On catapulted Marvin Gaye to new heights of fame and artistic recognition. He was no longer just a Motown star. He was now a cultural icon, celebrated for his ability to blend social commentary with musical innovation. Over the next few years, Marvin continued to push musical boundaries, exploring new styles and themes in albums like Let's Get It On and I Want You. Let's Get It On, released in 1973, marked a significant shift in Marvin's music. Moving away from the socially conscious themes of What's Going On, this album delved into the sensual and erotic, reflecting Marvin's complex relationship with love, sex, and spirituality. The title track became one of his biggest hits, cementing his reputation as a master of soul music. Marvin's success during this period brought him wealth, fame, and adoration, but it also came with increased pressure and scrutiny. He struggled with the expectations placed on him by fans, critics, and the music industry, all while battling his own personal demons. Behind the scenes, Marvin's life was becoming increasingly chaotic, as he grappled with drug addiction, financial troubles, and a tumultuous love life. Personal life, a portrait of inner turmoil. Marvin Gaye's personal life was as intricate and tumultuous as the music that made him a legend. His relationships with women, in particular, were fraught with intense emotions: passion, jealousy, love, and heartbreak, all of which mirrored the complexities of his inner world. These relationships were not just chapters in his life. They were deeply interwoven with his creative process, often fueling his most soulful and poignant songs. Marvin's first marriage to Anna Gordy, the sister of Motown founder Berry Gordy, was emblematic of the intense and often stormy relationships that would come to define his personal life. Anna was 17 years older than Marvin, and their union was marked by both deep affection and significant discord. Despite the age difference, Marvin and Anna shared a strong bond, with Anna playing a crucial role in Marvin's early career. She was more than just a wife. She was a mentor and a guiding force, helping him navigate the intricacies of the music industry. However, their relationship was far from smooth. Marvin's career was on a rapid ascent, and with fame came the temptations and pressures that often accompany success. The couple's marriage was strained by infidelities on both sides, jealousy, and the pressures of Marvin's burgeoning career. The tension between them was palpable, and their love, though genuine, was often overshadowed by conflict and mistrust. Their marriage produced one child, Marvin Gaye III, but even this was mired in complexity. It was later revealed that Anna's niece was the biological mother, and Anna had adopted him, adding another layer of complexity to their already strained relationship. As the 1970s progressed, Marvin's personal life became increasingly unstable. After his marriage to Anna ended, he entered into a relationship with Janice Hunter, a young woman 17 years his junior. Janice was the inspiration behind some of Marvin's most sensual and passionate music, particularly the album I Want You. Their relationship was intense, marked by both deep love and profound challenges. Janice was not just a muse. She was a pivotal figure in Marvin's life during a period of significant change and turmoil. Marvin and Janice had 2 children together, Nona and Frankie, but their relationship was far from idyllic. The passion that initially drew them together eventually gave way to a tumultuous dynamic characterized by infidelity, mistrust, and emotional volatility. Marvin's increasing dependence on cocaine during this time exacerbated the tension in their relationship. His drug use spiraled out of control, affecting his behavior, his health, and ultimately, his ability to maintain a stable relationship. The once passionate love affair deteriorated into a bitter and public divorce in 1981, leaving both Marvin and Janice emotionally scarred. Throughout his life, Marvin Gaye was haunted by the emotional scars left by his father's abusive behavior. The unresolved trauma from his childhood profoundly influenced his relationships with women. He often oscillated between intense love and destructive behavior, driven by deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. These unresolved issues manifested in patterns of behavior that led to repeated cycles of love, betrayal, and heartbreak. Despite his public persona as a confident, charismatic star, Marvin was privately plagued by profound feelings of depression, anxiety, and loneliness. The descent into darkness. As the 1980s approached, Marvin Gaye's life was spiraling out of control, a stark contrast to the smooth, soulful music that had made him a beloved icon. The once charismatic singer was now deeply entrenched in a battle with drug addiction that had escalated to dangerous levels. Cocaine had become a constant in Marvin's life, exacerbating the emotional wounds he had carried since childhood. This addiction took a heavy toll on his physical and mental health, eroding his relationships, undermining his career, and isolating him from those who cared about him. Financial troubles compounded Marvin's woes. Despite the fame and fortune that his music had brought him, Marvin's lavish spending habits, coupled with poor financial management, left him in significant debt. The financial strain was exacerbated by legal battles, tax issues, and the costs associated with his drug habit. The pressures of his crumbling finances were overwhelming, and Marvin began to feel the walls closing in on him. In an attempt to escape the chaos of his life in the United States, Marvin fled to Europe in 1981, seeking refuge in a self-imposed exile. Marvin settled in Belgium, a world away from the pressures of the American music industry and the personal demons that haunted him back home. Europe offered him a temporary sanctuary, a place where he could distance himself from the destructive patterns that had overtaken his life. During this period, Marvin sought to regain control of both his life and career. He immersed himself in music once again, channeling his energy into the creation of what would become his final studio album, Midnight Love, released in 1982. The album marked a significant comeback for Marvin Gaye. Its lead single, Sexual Healing, was a global hit, showcasing Marvin's ability to blend sensuality with emotional depth. The song's success revitalized his career, earning him his first Grammy Award and reaffirming his place in the music world. Sexual Healing was more than just a hit. It was a reminder of Marvin's extraordinary talent and his enduring appeal as an artist. It appeared that Marvin was on the path to reclaiming his former glory. However, the professional achievements of this period belied the ongoing turmoil in Marvin's personal life. His struggles with addiction persisted, and his mental health continued to deteriorate. Marvin became increasingly paranoid, plagued by the belief that people were out to harm him. These paranoid delusions were fueled by his drug use, which exacerbated his feelings of guilt, despair, and isolation. The mental and emotional instability that had haunted him for years now intensified, driving him further into a state of anxiety and fear. Final 24 hours, a tragic end. The final 24 hours of Marvin Gaye's life were a tragic culmination of years of pain, inner turmoil, and unresolved conflict that had plagued him throughout his life. By 1984, Marvin had returned to the United States after years of self-imposed exile in Europe. He sought refuge in the familiar surroundings of his parents' home in Los Angeles, hoping to find some measure of peace and stability. However, the return to his childhood home, where he had endured years of emotional and physical abuse at the hands of his father, only intensified the deep-seated tensions that had never truly dissipated. Marvin's relationship with his father, Marvin Gaye Sr., had always been fraught with conflict. Marvin Sr. was a strict, domineering figure who had never supported his son's musical ambitions, belittling and undermining him at every turn. Their relationship had deteriorated even further as Marvin's fame grew, with his father's jealousy and disdain for his son's lifestyle fueling their ongoing feud. By the time Marvin moved back in with his parents, the relationship had reached a breaking point. Marvin Sr.'s disdain for his son's success, coupled with Marvin's escalating drug use and increasingly erratic behavior, created an explosive atmosphere within the household. The weight of these unresolved issues bore heavily on Marvin Gaye as he struggled with deepening depression, paranoia, and feelings of despair. The pressures of his career, the toll of addiction, and the emotional scars left by his father's abuse had brought him to a breaking point. Despite his outward success, Marvin was a man in profound pain, struggling to reconcile his public persona with the turmoil that raged inside him. On April 1, 1984, the tension that had been simmering for years finally erupted. The details of what exactly transpired that day remain somewhat unclear, but it is known that a heated argument broke out between Marvin and his father. Marvin, in a fragile mental state, was already on edge. Reports suggest that he had been increasingly paranoid in the days leading up to the altercation, convinced that people were conspiring against him. His behavior had become more erratic, and he had reportedly been in a dark, depressive state, making ominous comments to his mother about feeling as though he was going to get what he deserved. As the argument between father and son escalated, the situation quickly turned physical. Decades of resentment, anger, and unresolved pain came to a head in that fateful moment. Marvin, in his emotional and mental turmoil, may have lashed out, desperate to confront the man who had been the source of so much of his suffering. But this confrontation would have a devastating and final outcome. In the heat of the moment, Marvin Sr., who had long harbored animosity towards his son, retrieved a gun, a weapon that Marvin himself had given to his father as a gift, in what was likely a misguided attempt to earn his approval, or perhaps out of a sense of obligation. The irony of this act was cruel. A symbol of protection became an instrument of destruction. Marvin Sr. pointed the gun at his son and, in a moment of irrevocable decision, pulled the trigger. The first shot struck Marvin in the heart, and the second in his shoulder. It was a quick but brutal end to a life that had been filled with both extraordinary brilliance and profound sorrow. Marvin Gaye was pronounced dead at 1:01 p.m. on April 1, 1984, just one day before what would have been his 45th birthday. The news of his death sent shockwaves around the world. Fans, friends, and fellow musicians were left reeling, unable to comprehend how the life of such a towering figure in music could be so abruptly and violently cut short by the very person who had brought him into the world. The man who had given so much to the world through his music, who had used his voice to express the deepest emotions and social concerns of his time, was silenced in an instant, leaving behind a legacy of songs that would forever resonate with the pain, passion, and complexity that defined his life. The tragic irony of Marvin Gaye's death, being killed by his own father, brought to light the depth of the troubled relationship that had haunted him throughout his life. It was a relationship marked by control, jealousy, and emotional brutality, factors that had shaped Marvin's personality, his art, and ultimately, his fate. The world mourned not only the loss of a musical genius, but also the tragic circumstances of a life that had been riddled with suffering, culminating in an end that, while shocking, seemed to echo the darkness that had shadowed Marvin's entire existence. His death was not just the loss of a musical icon. It was the closing chapter of a story filled with profound sadness and unresolved conflict, a story that would leave an indelible mark on all who knew him and all who had been touched by his music. The dark truth, confirmed by his children. In the years since Marvin Gaye's untimely death, much speculation has surrounded the extent of the emotional and psychological abuse he suffered at the hands of his father, Marvin Gaye Sr. As fans and biographers pieced together the narrative of Marvin's life, a picture emerged of a man who, despite his extraordinary musical talent and success, was deeply wounded by his turbulent upbringing. The question of how these early experiences of abuse impacted Marvin's mental health and contributed to his tragic demise has remained a topic of deep interest and concern. Recently, Marvin's children, Nona and Marvin III, have stepped forward to shed light on these dark truths, confirming what many had long suspected about their father's troubled life. In various interviews and public statements, Nona and Marvin III have spoken with raw honesty about the profound impact their grandfather's cruelty had on their father's life. They have painted a vivid and heartbreaking picture of a man who was not only physically and emotionally abused, but also manipulated and belittled by the very person who should have been his protector. Marvin Sr.'s relentless criticism and harsh discipline left deep scars on young Marvin, scars that would never fully heal and would shape his identity, relationships, and career. Nona Gaye, in particular, has been outspoken about the cycle of abuse that plagued her family. She has emphasized the importance of breaking the silence and bringing these painful truths into the light, not just for the sake of her father's legacy, but also as a means of healing and preventing such cycles from continuing. Nona has recounted how her father's struggles with self-esteem, addiction, and depression were directly tied to the trauma he experienced as a child. She has described the immense pressure Marvin felt to prove himself worthy, not just as an artist, but as a man, constantly battling the internalized voices of doubt and worthlessness instilled in him by his father's harsh words and actions. The revelations from Marvin's children have also highlighted the complex relationship between Marvin's personal pain and his artistic genius. While his music was often a reflection of his inner turmoil, serving as both a cathartic release and a form of self-expression, it was also a reminder of the burdens he carried. His battles with addiction, which intensified in his later years, were not merely the excesses of a rock star lifestyle, but rather coping mechanisms for the deep-seated anguish that haunted him. Nona and Marvin III have spoken about how their father's reliance on drugs was a desperate attempt to numb the pain of his unresolved trauma, a way to escape the overwhelming feelings of inadequacy and despair that had been ingrained in him from an early age. Growing up in the shadow of such a legendary yet troubled figure presented its own set of challenges for Marvin's children. They have discussed the difficulty of reconciling the public image of Marvin Gaye, the charismatic, soulful superstar, with the private reality of a man who was deeply flawed, fragile, and often consumed by his inner demons. Despite the pain and tragedy that marked Marvin's life, Nona and Marvin III have expressed deep love and admiration for their father. They recognize that, despite his struggles, Marvin was a man of immense talent, warmth, and humanity. He was someone who, in his best moments, was capable of incredible kindness and generosity, qualities that were often overshadowed by the more troubled aspects of his personality. In sharing these dark truths, Marvin Gaye's children have not only honored their father's memory, but also provided a more nuanced understanding of the man behind the music. They have shown that Marvin's life was not defined solely by his struggles or by the circumstances of his death, but also by his resilience, his artistry, and his enduring impact on the world. By speaking out, Nona and Marvin III have helped to ensure that Marvin Gaye's legacy is remembered not just for the brilliance of his music, but also for the depth of his humanity, the complexities, the pain, and the extraordinary beauty that he brought into the world despite the hardships he faced.